Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. I am one of the hosts, Zach, and as always, the other host is Chris. What's up, buddy?
Hello, my dear friend. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, around the interwebs, in our solar system. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I'm good. A little tired, but we sit here at the time of the recording. We sit here on Super Bowl Eve here in the United States. My Seattle Seahawks are going to be playing tomorrow. At the time this episode comes out, the results will already be out, and I'll either be really pissed or really happy, one of
Mhm.
the two. So I'm a little bit. Well, no, I'm not. I'm a lot nervous because I want my team to win, and all my in-laws and my wife's friends back in Massachusetts are all Patriots fans, and I'll never hear the end of it if they
Absolutely.
win. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you think on this Super Bowl Eve that your relatives and your in-laws are also thinking that if the Patriots win again with this battle with the Seahawks, then they will have yet like another thing that they will be able to send you texts on and maybe video clips on as
oh yeah,
perhaps they will. Yeah,
1,000%. Yes,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I've already gotten some of those from the last time the Seahawks and the Patriots played in the Super Bowl in the 2015-16 season. So yes. Um, Nope. I was joking with my wife. I said the Patriots have six Super Bowls. The Seahawks have one. Let's spread the wealth a little bit. Let's let the Seahawks get a second one here. That's how I look at it. So I mean I'm confident in my team, but it's the Super Bowl. Anything can happen. So of course I'm gonna be nervous because I don't want to have to deal. And then of course at work too. I'm gonna go to work and people are gonna talk smack if they lose. And there's a Patriots fan at work, and I'm not gonna hear the end of it either. So yeah.
Oh my, oh my, oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
man.
Well,
It's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, in the north here, in the Pacific Northwest and in like Alaska, I have seen all of the Seahawks gear out today and
That's
tonight.
good.
I have not seen any like Patriots gear or Patriots fandom. It has all been Seahawks fandom up here.
It's good. Consider yourself lucky, the area you live when it comes to football, my friend. Yes. So I'm very much looking forward to the game tomorrow, but I'm nervous and gonna have fun. However, in the meantime, I'm gonna attempt to redirect my energy off of that, and we're gonna talk about the latest episode in our current Spotlight series, Starfleet's Finest. With a season 4, episode 12 from Star Trek The Next Generation entitled The Wounded. And this episode was one of a couple, including Pegasus, that I thought of when I was thinking about this Spotlight series, and we were talking about kind of what's the next thing we want to do. And this was definitely one of those that I thought about because I think this fits the mold. And a matter of fact, there's a line Picard says later in the episode that we'll get to that really highlights exactly this Spotlight series and the title itself. Um, Obviously, being a massive TNG fan myself, and I know TNG is your favorite Star Trek series, Chris. What did you think about the idea when we mentioned doing the Wounded? What came up in your mind when you thought about this episode initially?
Yeah, yeah. And I know you'd been thinking about this one like a lot. So some of the initial thoughts I had with the wounded parallel the thoughts that I had with Pegasus because it's very much uh the relationships that like the characters have with their former commanders, right? So in the Pegasus, you had the relationship between Commander Riker and Captain, oh, I'm forgetting his name.
Admiral Pressman, yeah,
Admiral Preston.
yeah,
Admiral
yeah,
Pressman, thank you. And then here it is your man, your myth, the legend, Mr. Miles O'Brien, and the
that's right.
relationship with his former captain, like Captain Maxwell.
Yeah,
And so there's a lot of parallel there. Now this is quite a bit different than in Pegasus, I'd say, but it's neat to explore that dynamic because like in both of our lives, right, we've got relationships with former mentors, former teachers, or former like supervisors. Um, so and then you think about that, right? You think about that as you progress through your career. Um,
yeah.
yeah, and this one it's interesting. So that's what came to my mind because in this one it's interesting where Miles O'Brien, like he very much feels that hey, he's had the opportunity to serve with two of Starfleet's finest captains ever. You know? Yeah,
Starfleet's finest. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good point. Um, this episode I think is great. So this episode and the idea of Captain Maxwell being the way he is in this particular episode and the thought of how O'Brien viewed him. By the way, O'Brien's a Union man, you know.
Mhm.
I'm just going to say that out loud.
Yeah.
But this kind of reminds me a little bit of Commodore Decker and Doomsday Machine, right? Because you think like, okay, this guy's really he's got a great record, great track record, and then something happens and he snaps and he changes and he goes a much different route and he begins to behave in a way that he wouldn't normally behave. And we're going to see that as we talk about this episode. So I think extreme trauma affected Commodore Decker and what he did in the Doomsday Machine. And I think extreme trauma affected Captain Maxwell and what he did in this episode, The Wounded. I think that's I kind of made that comparison a little bit. Obviously, completely different circumstances, but I think the idea and the thought is still there. And so it's going to be interesting to talk about, you know, the decision making and everything else that goes into this because there's a lot here on the line for Picard as well, and what he's been ordered to do. And we'll get into all that and so much more as we break this episode down and highlight Captain Benjamin Maxwell as our highlighted Starfleet's finest individual for this episode. But this episode, the story was by Stuart and Sarah Charno and Cy Chermak. Chermak, I think that's how you say that name. The teleplay was written by Jerry Taylor, and it was directed by Chip Chalmers. So this is season 4, and we know this is because of where it happens, right? This is post Best of Both Worlds. This is post Locutus being the Borg, or Picard being Locutus. Locutus being the Borg. That was pretty stupid.
Mhm.
Picard being Locutus. And so we kind of find ourselves at that kind of particular point in the timeline.
Yeah, it we do. And this has a lot of insight. The beginning of this episode has a lot of insight into Captain Picard too,
Yeah.
which I like, and we're going to explore this in the episode as well. We open the episode with them uh, doing mapping surveys near the Cardassian border, and Captain Picard is naturally very cautious, and we learn some history with Captain Picard that, you know, he recounts to the bridge crew there that when he was in command of the Stargazer, and he had to essentially run. He had to tuck tail and run. And he had an encounter with the Cardassians, right? And then during his encounter, he had good intentions. He wanted to offer uh, a show of goodwill. He had lowered his shields, was there to be a diplomat to develop good relationships with the Cardassians, and it didn't work out at all. So at that time, the Cardassians had like attacked the Stargazer, disabled the Stargazer, and then he essentially had to do what he can to regroup and run. And the reaction from Troy and Worf is really great because Counselor Troy is like, "Why? I find that like hard to believe," and Mr. that you would actually run from this, and the same with Worf. He's like, "No, you wouldn't have done that, right?" And the Cardassians have no honor, and Captain Picard's like, "Yeah, we'll believe it," and it's kind of great that he shares that story, right? So like as the captain and as the leader and kind of recounting like how he dealt with that circumstance.
Yeah. Well, it sets up the stage a little bit for this idea of trust between the Federation and the Cardassians, right? Um, you know, Worf talks about how they have no honor, they can't be trusted, and I think Troy says something to the effect of, they're hey, we're allies with them now. We got to trust them. And I love Worf's line, and I think he is absolutely spot on when he says trust is earned and not given. And so to me, that particular line by Worf undertones this entire episode. And it really bubbles to the surface several times throughout this episode.
Actually, yeah, that thematically goes throughout this this episode, doesn't it? And it ties at the
Hmm.
end. And I think it also ties into Captain Picard's decision making, like at the end, right? If we could talk about
Yes.
that a little bit, because from a perspective and from Worf's perspective, he's saying trust is earned and not given. And there's a lot of weight to that and there's a lot of truth to that. But Captain Picard also makes some decisions, when he's faced with a choice of like, how much further should he investigate these supply ships? Should he board the supply ships? Should he say and kind of investigate these accusations that Captain Maxwell is making on these supply ships? Essentially that the Cardassians are setting up a base that could connect with three other sectors of Federation space, and it's a very kind of offensive maneuver, offensive act, right?
Yeah.
And Captain Picard, chooses not to do any further investigation like on those supply ships. And he gives the reason, like the explicit reason later with Gold Masset. Um
Who f- so happens to look exactly kind of like Gul Dukat.
yeah,
Because it's
he's
played
like
by the same actor, right? Mark
same
Alamo.
actor. He's Gold Dukat's like brother, his twin. They were
Yeah,
twin. Gold Masset and Gold Dukat were twins. Like we could craft this whole separate canon.
that's true. That that is true. Uh, he is Gul Dukat's brother with the handle with the handlebar stash, kind of a little. Yeah, he's got like the thing coming down here. He's got the facial hair. Gul Dukat, I don't believe ever had facial hair, but
Right.
Gul Macet is rocking some type of '90s Cardassian stash, like goatee, half goatee thing or something. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, you're right. It's the Cardassian goatee.
I remember
Everything that.
seeing a documentary one time, and Michael Westmore mentioned that the reason why the Cardassians have those ridge things that come up here on their neck and go down is because Mark Alimo had a really long neck. And Mark
Oh,
Alimo is one of the first Cardassians we see. In
yeah,
fact, I'm trying to think of this, Chris. If you can remember your TNG history prior to this episode,
yeah.
is this the first time we see the Cardassians in TNG? I don't remember if it is. Is this the very first episode we ever see them?
I think it's close. It's
Like
got to
they've
be
been
close to the
mentioned
first
before,
time.
but
Yeah,
I don't remember what
yeah.
first episode they actually appear on screen. So if this isn't the first appearance, it's got to be one of the first,
Like
right?
one of the first ones. Yeah, yeah. Because I think I remember Mark Lima being one of the first appearances of a Cardassian.
Yeah. And so, yeah, Michael Westmore said that they had to make these ridge things on their neck because of Marco Limo. So that's why all the Cardassians had that because of him.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I liked a little bit of insight into just different cultures, because Worf is like saying Kardashians have no honor, and I can't- maybe maybe they don't. I don't know. So
I mean, well,
yeah.
so everything we know about the Cardassians, I would say what 95% or more of it is learned in DS9 because of the lore and the culture building that happens in that show. And the Cardassians are one of the main protagonists or one of the main
Mhm.
antagonists of DS9, especially Gul Dukat. Uh, that makes sense, actually, what Worf is saying. If you think about it, with the Obsidian Order and their justice system and the way that they'll sell each other out, I mean, yeah, I would probably tend to agree with him. I mean, the Cardassians aren't exactly known for their honor. They're
Yeah.
very conniving, backstabbing. They'll sell out their, whoever they need to, basically. The only one thing they have going for them, in theory, although Gul Dukat's not a good representation of this, is that in Cardassian culture, family is everything. Although you do see a little bit of that in the sense that, with Zial, right, when they discover her and
Mm.
bring her back, he does take her back to Cardassia, which does completely destroy his family and his reputation and his place within the government. But I digress. But I would agree. I think Worf is pretty spot on with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we're treated to a nice scene with Miles O'Brien and his new wife Keiko, so that's nice, and they get to share their different experiences with the meals. So, which is great. Miles much prefers his traditional like Irish like meals and would love to have that and share that with Keiko. So that was cute.
Yeah. Uh, I'll be honest with you, Chris.
Yeah.
Keiko's breakfast selection didn't sound too good to me. Kelp buds, plankton loaf, and sea berries. I don't know. That didn't it didn't look too appealing to me. It looked very I like when O'Brien's like he's like, but I'm not a fish. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tended to agree on O'Brien's side when he said, about having things like scalloped potatoes and bacon and all that eggs and all that kind of stuff. And she's like, for breakfast?
So
That seems kind of,
heavy.
yeah, it seems
Yeah.
kind of heavy, right? And I thought to when she said that seems kind of heavy, I wanted to be like Doc and be like, heavy, heavy, heavy. You keep using that word. Is there something wrong with the Earth's rotational spin or whatever in
Yeah.
the future? Um, Gravitational pull, whatever he says in the first Back to the Future movie. But yeah, I think this is a very cute scene because him and Keiko have not been married very long at this point. I want to say, and now I'm having to think of my TNG history. I want to
Hmm.
say early in season 4 is when we see O'Brien and Keiko's wedding.
Yeah.
Isn't it
Yeah.
season 4?
It's season four.
Yeah, it was either late season 3 or early season 4 is what I had remembered it.
Data is pivotal in it. Data is pivotal as the messenger go between Miles and Keiko because
He
Keiko wants
is.
to call it off.
Yep, that's true. And
Yeah.
then is it Picard's the one that marries them, right?
Yes,
As the
indeed.
captain? Yeah.
Yep. Yes,
Yep.
indeed, he is.
Yeah, for someone who is still trying to learn how to be more human-like, the fact that is the go-between between Keiko and Miles
Hmm.
is really comical, and the irony there is hysterical.
Hmm. That's good. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah,
So they're doing the Enterprise is doing their thing, mapping things in near the Cardassian border, and then they get attacked just out of the
yeah,
blue by
yeah. Here Miles is trying to have a lovely breakfast with his wife, and you get a red alert that goes off, and he's got to get up and leave, and yeah, Enterprise is being fired on by the Cardassians.
yeah, by Golden Set.
Yeah,
And yeah, Captain Picard and Enterprise, like they make short work of it, of this little skirmish, this little battle, right? And
yeah.
I could see if you did you notice like uh Worf's like little small like expressions, and then Admiral Riker's, or not Admiral Riker, Commander. That's
One
later.
day,
That's
yeah,
later.
yeah,
One day,
later, yeah.
Commander Riker's like expressions. They kind of look at Captain Picard and they're like into it. They're into the fight because they're totally winning, and like this is Worf is loving this.
Oh
He's
yeah,
loving disabling the Cardassian ship. And then Riker's just, I think he was loving it too. He was having a good time. Okay, they're gonna make short work of this.
yeah. I mean, you got to think, right? With Star Trek, every episode is like we're dropping in on the crew, right? We don't see them every day, and every
Hmm.
day isn't some action-packed adventure filled day, right? There's got to be days where you're just bored out of your mind. Like there's some cosmic dust floating around and stuff like that. And I think of if you remember the Voyager episode Night, where it's
Yeah.
pitch and there's no stars and everything. A very, very good episode. I think maybe one day we'll do for a future Halloween special or one of our Halloween episodes because it's very spooky and unsettling. But you see many of those days where every day is the same and there's nothing going on. You have to imagine, right, that there's going to be days like that on board the ship. Even the flagship's going to have dull days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're like, yeah, finally some action. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in the conversation that they have with Gul Masset, like Gul Masset is letting them know that, well, Captain Picard's like, "Why are you firing us? Why are you attacking?" And Gul Masset was like, "Of course I'm going to attack you. We're at war." And
Hmm.
this is very confusing because, as far as Captain Picard knows, the treaty is still on. They did all this work on the treaty. Um, and Gold Masset explains, well, one of your starships came and destroyed an outpost. and this is completely new to Picard, and he's just not sure if it's true or not true. And that's how it kind of kicks off this kind of the first part of the episode. And shortly thereafter, um, Captain Picard is in a meeting with Admiral Hayden, I think, or
Yeah,
Hayton,
you're
one
right.
of those.
Yep, Admiral
Yeah,
Hayden.
yeah. And this gives some great insight too, and to Captain Picard's predicament, because Admiral Hayden is saying, yes, it's true. Looks like Captain Maxwell is doing these things. He's not responsive. We're not sure what's going on. But Captain Picard, we need you to go. Stop Maxwell. We need you to maintain the peace. And Admiral Hayden is very, very clear to him. He says, Jean-Luc, I, I can't tell you how important it is to maintain the peace because we cannot have another armed conflict with us. The Federation cannot handle it. And you are to do anything, anything to maintain that peace. And that plays into the captain's decisions, throughout this whole episode, right? Definitely does, because essentially saying, do everything you can to maintain the peace. I also took it as like if he had to do lethal force, well, he does kind of do lethal force, but if he had to take uh, uh, lethal force to destroy Maxwell's ship, then he was authorized to do so.
Yeah. I mean, those are pretty straightforward orders, right?
Yeah.
There's no beating around the bush. There's no gray area. It is like you said, Admiral Hayden tells him, do whatever is necessary, any and all things
Hmm.
in order to stop that. Because my guess is, because it's not written down anywhere, but as a member of the audience, I'm thinking uh, Admiral Hayden in his mind has to be thinking to himself, if we the loss of one starship is a small price to pay for the start of another war, which, as he's like you mentioned, he says we're not equipped to handle. In fact, I believe they even mention something to the effect of not being able to sustain another conflict, especially due to the losses at Wolf 359,
Mm.
which I don't want to say is passive aggressive, but it's kind of a little bit of a shot across the bow. Maybe it wasn't intended to be that way, but it's not like Picard doesn't know, right? I mean, he was there. He was friggin' Locutus, right? He was running the Borg crew at Wolf 359. So peace has to be preserved at all costs. So that's a really important thing, and I don't think there's any gray area on this order.
Does he say that? Does he tell
I,
Picard
I
about
don't
Wolf 359? That's a oh,
I can't
that's
remember if he did. I'll have to go back and
yeah.
look then. I'm just reading on the notes here, but
Yeah,
that would
that's a
make
great
sense,
move.
right?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
actually like that's a low thing to do. I have to say.
Well,
I have to say.
it's in our notes. Maybe he didn't actually say it, but I guess there would be some implication there.
Hmm.
Um, so I have to go back and double check because maybe I didn't catch that, but that in the first time. But yeah, that would be pretty low though. It's like, yeah, we had a lot of losses, Picard, because of your fault for getting captured by the Borg. But there is something Picard says in this exchange with him and Admiral Hayden that I think is really important to note. And it's important to note because it, to me, is sort of the inspiration for our entire Spotlight series we're doing. And that's when Picard says to Admiral Hayden, are something about, are you sure it's Captain Maxwell or whatever? Isn't he one of Starfleet's finest? That's a question. The name of the Spotlight series is Starfleet's Finest with a question mark. So this episode, that moment is a big inspiration for me uh, with this Spotlight series, trying to really think to yourself, okay, so we have these leaders in Starfleet, people like Pressman and Maxwell and Nechayev and Admiral Ross and all these other people, right? Just because they're in those positions, are they really Starfleet's finest, or or are they not Starfleet's finest? And that's kind of what we're getting after with these episodes, right? Because we're looking at these leaders, we're looking at these characters in these episodes and saying, okay, well, maybe at one point they were, but then we see an episode with them in it and something's happened. Maybe they've changed, maybe they still are, maybe they aren't. And this is a great example of that as we look to see what happens with Captain Maxwell and his decision making in this episode. But I thought that was
Yeah.
a really important thing that Picard mentioned because he's basically saying, well, this guy's been a stellar officer, right? Someone, this great person. And there he says something later on at the very end of the episode when he's talking to Golmasset about Maxwell and his service record. That's also very important. Uh, and it makes you wonder, okay, you have these great leaders and then something pushes them to the brink. Does that
Hmm.
mean that we all could be pushed to the brink? I would say yes. I do think that there is always an ability to push someone to the brink, no matter what kind of how good of a person they are, what kind of leader they are, given a specific situation, and it would be different for every person. But we're going to see that here with Captain Maxwell.
Yeah, we will. And Captain Picard noted that, Maxwell had been decorated with Starfleet's highest commendation 3 times
Yeah.
during the war. So he is one of Starfleet's like most decorated captains, obviously most known. Captain Picard like knew of him
Hmm.
and kind of renowned and respected captains, especially making a name for himself during the Cardassian conflict. At near the end of this episode, when Captain Picard is remarking like about Maxwell, they go into this discussion about loyalty and trust, and Captain Picard is like saying to Golmasset that, hey, you have a lot to learn about like who we are as humans, because um you know trust and loyalty, it takes a lot between two human beings for that bond of loyalty like to develop, and that bond of loyalty is not like lost like immediately. And we can pity Maxwell because of what happened to him, but he shall not be like dismissed. And I think that was very insightful into how Picard feels and thinks about like Maxwell. You can tell that he Picard's attitude towards Maxwell is different than Picard's attitude towards Pressman.
Mm.
I think Picard really does respect Maxwell and admire Maxwell, right? And so, and he tries as much as he can to give Maxwell the benefit of the doubt as they are pursuing him in the Cardassian space, right? So, um, that's a little bit of a like a subtle nuance, but like I think his attitude towards Maxwell definitely is very different than his attitude towards Pressman. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I mean, it ends in the same way, both of
Yeah.
them being taken into,
Mm.
quote unquote custody. But yes, I would agree with you on that. But it's interesting, Chris, because both of them in their respective episodes, right? Pressman and Pegasus, and then Maxwell in The Wounded here that we're talking about, both of them kill a significant number of people. And actually, I think Maxwell kills
More.
maybe kills more people than
There's
Pressman did. Now, that doesn't
yes.
negate what Pressman did or make what Pressman did any better or whatever. I mean, it's still, bad, really bad what
Mm.
Pressman did. But so I find that fascinating that he respects Maxwell so much, but not Pressman, even though both of them do some heinous things. And honestly, both of them put the Federation on the potential brink of war. I mean, they really they get just right towards the edge, right? Where Pressman could have pushed the Federation into a war with the Romulans. And now we're looking at Maxwell potentially pushing the Federation back into a war with the Cardassians, even though they've been at peace for almost a year.
Yeah, if the Enterprise had not been where it was, uh, near that sector of space, then the Federation would have gone into another war. Yeah,
Yeah.
re-entered back
Or
into the war with the
yeah,
Cardassians.
it, maybe it's not a multi-year war, but it certainly would have, I think. Yeah, I think you're right on that for sure. Um, so Picard tells his crew that Golmaset and two of his crew members are transporting on board the ship. Now, this is interesting because I think Picard looks at this scenario differently than Riker and especially Worf. Worf wants them to have, guards with them at all times, and they want to post guards in the sensitive areas of the ship. And Riker's like, yeah, I don't think we should just give them free range of the ship. And Picard's like, hey, they're our guests. They're not, you know, prisoners or anything like that. Picard, I feel like, is a little bit more laxed with having them on board, where Riker and Worf have more of a security type of mindset, which would make sense.
Yeah. Now, I was thinking about this too, because Picard is carrying with him that conversation that he had with Admiral Hayden, right? Don't forget, like, avoid the Feder do all you can to avoid the Federation having going into a conflict because we cannot take it. And
Yeah.
so he's carrying that in with him, and I think he's trying to be as transparent as possible to show the Cardassians that they're doing everything that they can, like to find the Phoenix. Um, and Riker and Worf are definitely considering it from their own perspectives of security of the Enterprise, right? Definitely like that, which they should be,
Yeah.
but they don't have the entire picture, uh, I think, as explicit as Captain Picard does, right? And so that definitely shapes how Captain Picard is explaining the situation and how he's dealing with the situation. One of the things I really liked in the meeting, this was in the conference room this was with Captain Picard and Riker and Worf and the Cardassians in there too, is when there's a little bit of back and forth and a little bit of friction between the Cardassians and the captain, and then them just kind of Cardassians kind of questioning, like, are you not believing that Captain Picard, you're not really gonna do, they don't believe him that they're gonna do it, that he's gonna do everything he can, like, um to find the Phoenix and
Yeah, they're
Captain
very
Maxwell.
skeptical, right?
Very
Yeah.
skeptical. Yeah,
Yeah.
very skeptical.
Yeah.
And uh and Captain Picard's explanation and how he deals with the situation, he's explaining, well, this is why I've invited you in. I want you in all the conferences. I want you to see all the operations, everything that we're doing. There's a look that Commander Riker gives right over to the captain, and he smile.
Yes.
It is a smiling look of like admiration to me. I took it like admiration that Riker had towards the captain, because only Captain Picard could have kind of handled it like he did, answered it like he did. And I saw that on, like, Riker. I was like, yeah, he's just smiling. He's like, yep, Captain Picard's like doing a good thing. And so that's what I noticed from, like, Admiral Riker right there, which was perfect. And then shortly thereafter, one of the reactions from the Cardassian officer says, um, "This is in a conversation to O'Brien, goes, your captain is quite the man." And I was like,
Mm.
right? So this is like this admiration that they're feeling for Captain Picard to be able to do what he does. So yeah, I really liked that.
There's another look that Riker gives to O'Brien when
Yes,
the Cardassians come on board and they're
yes,
leaving. Do you notice that
I
look? It's
did.
this this almost like this look that Riker has of I don't know, anger or disappoint. I can't really describe it, but he gives him this very stern look. And I don't know if it's because O'Brien was happy to see Maxwell and Riker didn't think he should be, given what Maxwell is, did and all of this stuff. But you notice the look I'm
I
talking
did.
about.
It was a
Yeah.
complete look of disapproval.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it was. Yeah,
yeah,
like that he's kind of fawning a little, kind of sort of has us fawning over his old captain, even though given the circumstances, kind of like looking at O'Brien like this isn't the time or place right now, right?
yeah,
Because you know what I mean?
totally. It was perfect and
Yeah.
very, very subtle, right? It's
Yeah.
perfect.
I don't know that I ever really noticed that very much at all. Any of the other times I've watched this episode, which is another makes Star Trek so great because you always find something different each time, right?
Mhm.
And I don't ever remember putting that together or noticing that glance that Riker gives O'Brien, but I noticed it when I watched it earlier today or last night. I was watching it and I was like, "Oh my gosh, how come I didn't notice that before?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And it puts um like in the background this great kind of circumstance because um Miles is the only one that is directly served with Maxwell. Like everyone else's knowledge of Maxwell is just kind of indirect.
Yeah.
And right now, all the bridge crew knows is that, hey, Maxwell is doing something really, really, really wrong. And um and we got to find out like what it is. And he just killed a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, like 700 or something, right? Wasn't
700.
it what it is on a
Yeah.
Cardassian transport? It was a lot of people. A
Yeah.
lot of people.
And uh and I think there's knowledge that O'Brien has served directly with Maxwell because someone shares that. I don't think O'Brien shared that. It was
Data
someone else.
does.
Data shared.
Data because I think Picard was looking for someone who was familiar with Maxwell
Hmm.
and or had served with him before. And Data says, "Oh yeah, O'Brien did. He served with him on the Rutledge. He was his tactical officer."
Yeah.
So that's when Picard requests O'Brien to meet with him.
Yeah. And wasn't there, I'm trying to remember. Wasn't there a meeting in the conference room, like an initial meeting where
Yes,
Captain Picard says, "What do you know? What can you
with
share
the
about Maxwell?"
Cardassians, yeah,
Yeah.
and he asked O'Brien. That's where he wanted O'Brien there because he wanted that perspective, right, of someone who had served with Maxwell to kind of clear the air a little bit and say, hey, what was Maxwell like
Yeah.
before this, right? Is this something that is this how he was? Was this always how he was, or is he different then than he is now? And I believe O'Brien says to him that, you know, he was a great guy and all this stuff um so O'Brien kind of explains some of the circumstances. In fact, there's even a moment because it comes up that Maxwell lost his family when the Cardassians raided Setlik 3, which
Yeah.
I was kind of joke like that O'Brien is the hero from Setlik 3 and Gul Dukat, I guess what Gul Musset's brother.
The twins.
Yeah, exactly. It's mentioned in DS9 when Gul Dukat goes, "Ah, yes, yeah, the famous hero of Setlik 3 or something like that." It comes up again in DS9. Setlik 3 is mentioned, I believe, multiple times in DS9 because of what happened, and then we find out in this episode what it is that O'Brien did during that time
Yeah.
on Setlik 3, which we'll get to. And he talks about uh, the sneak attack from the Cardassian militia and the hundreds of civilians that were killed. Uh, and there's a thought that by the Cardassians, I believe, right, and during this meeting where they think that Maxwell might be out for vengeance, but
Yeah.
he's the one that says, no, no, Maxwell wouldn't do that. That's
Yeah.
not that's not who Maxwell is.
Yeah. That's not who Maxwell is. He's got to have a good reason.
Yeah,
That's right. That was good because they
yeah,
do.
you're right because he says if by doing this he had to have had a good reason why he
Yeah.
wouldn't just do this to do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that is likely absolutely true from Miles
Yeah,
O'Brien's like
yeah,
experience with serving under Captain Maxwell. That yeah, he
yeah,
must have had a good reason.
right.
Um, there's something like I want to express about Captain Picard here too is that the just that small act of Captain Picard wanting O'Brien in this, seeking information from O'Brien, kind of gives this is like who Captain Picard is. He wants, if there's any piece of information that can help inform what the actual situation is, like he tries to search that out to add that to the picture. He's always that's why he has his conferences and he's trying to get input from all his senior officers, just trying to build the picture so he can make the best right decision that he can all the time. So that's that's what I like. It's like, hey, anyone anyone know Maxwell? Let's see if we can get some information on him.
Yeah, I love that Picard goes into this trying not to make any assumptions, right? And in that conference, I believe is where Picard says, "Hey, we're going to keep this strictly to the facts." Uh, he wants people to be objective about this. We got to figure out what's going on. And you're right. Picard does a great job of getting the views of others first. He doesn't make leadership decisions in a vacuum. He doesn't just say, "Okay, yep, there's this thing going on. All right, let's go do this."
Hmm.
He says, you hear so many times throughout so many episodes where he's on the bridge or he's in the conference room and he asks and says literally says suggestions. He wants to know what everybody else is thinking. And there's many times where he takes those suggestions and does that.
Yeah.
And that to me is another great quality about Picard's leadership style because it shows that he recognizes, hey, guys, I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. Therefore, I need your input to help make the best informed decision I can as a captain and and to help make what he believes, Captain Picard, is the right decision.
That's right.
So there's a reason why Picard is so great. I mean,
That's
it's
right.
true. It's
That's
true.
right.
Even though we all know if Picard had just punched Q in the face like Cisco did, maybe Q would have left him alone, but he allowed Q to meddle. Picard's not a fighter, right? I mean, he's a diplomat. He's not a, brawling with your fist kind of guy.
He
Cisco, on the
was.
other,
He was until he got stabbed through the
well,
heart. Yeah.
that's true. The NASA can kind of change that, right? The artificial heart did kind of change that whole thing.
Yeah.
But as a captain, we know he's not like that, right? Cisco's like, nah, 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 Q, get off my station and punch him in the face, and Q
Yeah.
leaves, never to be seen again.
Yeah, that's right. Soon after, they eh, they're in the chase, trying to find the Phoenix, and they're seeing the Phoenix pursue some other ships, right? And so this is where this is playing out like at a distance, and Picard is in a quandary. Right? So he's watching this from afar. The Phoenix like pursue these ships, and Golden Musette is like, "Let me give you a suggestion, Captain.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you give us the Phoenix's transponder codes because we've got some other ships that could intercept." And this is where Captain Picard is like, he's trying to protect Maxwell and the Federation like as much as possible to the very end moment, right? So
Yeah.
he's doing a little bit of stalling before he's got to make that final decision, because he asks like Mr. Worf, like, any responses to our hails from the Phoenix? And
Yeah.
Mr. Worf was like, no responses, and finally he has to make that decision and kind of give the transponder codes to the Cardassians so that they can intercept.
When I was watching that scene, Chris, it
Yeah.
made me think of, now it's not the exact same, but the way that Worf makes it sound in the episode makes it sound similar to when the Duras sisters figured out the shield harmonic frequency or whatever it was in Star Trek Generations, and they were able to pierce the shields of the Enterprise and cause severe damage very quickly.
Yeah.
Still, I still find it BS that the old one bird of prey takes down the Federation flagship. However, uh, that's just me. That's just me. Um, but it, you're right. Picard is trying to protect Maxwell and the Federation, but he also knows that the line between war and peace, in no pun to the book or anything, but the line between going to war or keeping the peace with the Cardassians is ever so thin, and he's right on the cusp, on the edge of it bleeding over into becoming a war again. Which, as you had mentioned earlier, Admiral Hayden said you have to do whatever it takes. Basically, there is nothing off the table in this case, and to me, I kind of equate this idea of the transponder code because Worf mentioned something about being able to do something take the shields down or something with their transponder code or whatever. Uh, that by giving them that information about the Phoenix is like handing the enemy top secret information. You
Mm.
know what I mean? Like or it's an ally, but it's really sensitive. It's really close hold information, but for the sake of avoiding a massive war or some kind of big conflict, you're literally giving this information away. So for Picard to do that, I thought to myself, that's a huge, huge deal. Because even Worf was like, what? You're
Yeah.
gonna do what, Captain? No, 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 no. No, we can't do this, we can't do this. And Picard's thinking to himself exactly what Admiral Hayden told him. Do whatever you have to do to keep the peace.
Yeah.
So that was a huge, huge decision and a massive risk on Picard's part.
Yeah. And it was what he had to do.
Yeah,
Right? Feel that. It's
agreed.
absolutely what he had to do. Yeah. Can Yeah, it was a great moment, a great scene. I also
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about Miles O'Brien and kind of these personal moments that he has with the Cardassian officers.
Well,
And
I'm always down to talk about
yeah,
some Miles Edward O'Brien. So,
yeah, absolutely. And, as an individual, like as a person, Miles has a lot going on in his mind right now. So he's newly he's a newlywed. He found out that his captain that he really admires, his former captain that he really admires, that he has such great feelings for, like is essentially being pursued now by the Enterprise. It's kind of at the uh center of this like almost this conflict right now. And he's got that in the back of his mind. And then he was freshly reminded of Setlick 3 and what
mhm.
all like transpired there and then like his role. And then now he's dealing with like this reflection of the Cardassians being this reflection of how he feels about himself, like inside. He's
Yeah.
dealing with all of that, right? So I think, um, and it comes out like really abruptly, like in his engagements with the Cardassians here.
Yeah, and the turbo lift, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I think the one Cardassian seems very uh uh, innocent's not the right word, but just kind of like just kind of friendly. Like, hey,
yeah.
I'd love to talk about, some of your tech with you because our transporters do this thing and yours do that thing, and we want to talk to you about some of that. And we're gonna go to your 10 forward, your bar.
Hmm.
And he says, I'll if the captain orders me to do this, I'll do this, and blah blah. He's like, but who I choose to spend my time with is my doing. And then he gets really abrupt and, like you said, walks off the transporter. Um, it's really out of place, really out of character for O'Brien to do that at this point in his career, right? As much because we don't O'Brien's not this massive character like he becomes in DS9, right? I mean, he's a recurring character. He's a small character, right? I would kind of equate him maybe to he's a little bit bigger than like a Nursagawa on the
Yeah.
show, right? Like you see him in some scenes and there's a little bit here and there, and he did have the episode where he got married, which was focused a lot around him. But he's not a main character like he is on DS9. So we don't know a ton about him, and of course, we learn a lot about him in this episode. So you have uh, that scene on the turbo lift. Then you have the scene when he comes to 10 forward, where he sits down and they begin talking. And I love the way this was written. So props to Jerry Taylor for the teleplay on this. Where they're talking or whatever, and he talks to the Cardassian about how, what happened that day on Setlick 3, and about how he was, kind of guarding some civilians, and they burst in and he fired at one and stunned him, and the other one got on top of him, and one of the women threw him a phaser, and what he didn't realize was that it was set to max, and the guy literally disintegrated right in front of him, and that was the first time he'd ever killed somebody,
Hmm.
and that really really affected him big time. Because he even says, like, when I was growing up, I'd feel bad if I even swatted a mosquito. And I'm thinking to myself, does a Cardassian really know what a mosquito is? Wouldn't the Cardassian go, you swatted a what? What's a mosquito? But I guess there's an inference there. The Cardassian knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And the powerful line to me, and I think this is really, really, really applicable to what's going on in our world right now. And I really hope that for those of you watching or listening, consider this. He said, "I don't hate you," meaning the Cardassians. "I hate what you made me become," or something like that. I might be butchering that line a little bit. Uh, that's really powerful because I think there's a lot of people that we see, whether it's in the news or just in the world in general, who have become a certain way, and maybe it's not who they are, but it's what others have made them become. And I think that was a really powerful line. I think it was one of the most powerful lines in the episode, to be honest with you. I thought it was really great writing. And I think it's O'Brien recognizing in himself because he kind of lies to Keiko early in the episode, right? When she asks him what he thinks of the Cardassians, he's like, "Oh, I don't have any problem with them. They're fine. The war's over." But we can kind of tell that wasn't actually the case. And we learn in that turbo lift scene that what he said to Keiko wasn't exactly honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was an important scene with Keiko. Right?
Yes.
And you see Keiko's expression on her face
Hmm.
when she asks him, like, how do you feel about the Cardassians? He said, it's fine. The war's over. And she just kind of gives this very skeptical, like unsure look.
Yeah, I don't think she
Oh,
believed him either.
yeah.
Because you could see when she asked him, he was very uneasy about it, right? Like he was very just like, "Oh, fine, fine." Um, that wasn't very convincing. I don't think she was convinced by his answer.
Yeah. Yeah. So connects to me, this connects to an idea that um, is present in Miles O'Brien in this episode. Um, probably most present in Miles O'Brien in this episode, and a bit present in Captain Picard, is that idea of self-awareness
Hmm.
and gaining that self-awareness. So uh, Miles is not as self-aware at the beginning of this episode, right? And so as he kind of reflects and goes on, and these are like pivotal moments. Like I think that conversation with Keiko kind of like affected Miles because he's saying, yeah, there's nothing wrong. I feel fine. But then he realizes later, no, I don't feel fine. And he thinks about his interaction that he had in the turbolift, and then he talks about it with the Cardassian and saying, "Oh yeah, something is wrong with him." And he becomes more and more like self-aware and he goes, "Yeah, I hate myself because of this." And um at the end of the episode, like he says something, I think he said it to Captain Picard or he said it to someone, he goes, "Yeah, what Captain Maxwell did was wrong, and I know that now." And I think he uses that phrase, "I know that now." So he's kind of gradually becoming more and more like self-aware through this episode, which is something that Maxwell could not be. Maxwell was not self-aware until the very, very end.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it took O'Brien to make Maxwell that way, right? It
Yeah.
took O'Brien to come over to the ship to convince him, "Hey, this is we can't do this," kind of
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked that because up until this point, right, in TNG, O'Brien is not a super well fleshed out character, and we don't know this about O'Brien. So to kind of dive into some of his background and to see some of this and to see kind of the equivalent of some PTSD, some shell shock, some that kind of stuff from that battle on set like 3, and that then carries over into to DS9, especially when O'Brien gets put in prison by the Cardassians and goes through their justice system. The whole O'Brien must suffer. That's quite the undertone and under theme of DS9 throughout, and even here, right? O'Brien must suffer. That's just this.
Yeah.
I don't know why, it just is, but uh, we see some of that. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. I think one of the underlying themes of this episode has to be prejudice.
Absolutely is.
Because we're seeing that from Maxwell, we're seeing that from O'Brien, and to a certain extent, we see it from the Cardassians. So to me, uh, that it really comes out here with O'Brien. And I think you are 1000% right. And I'm so glad you brought this up. The idea of self-awareness. That O'Brien has the self-awareness to identify that, look, it I'm not I don't hate you. I hate what you have made me become.
Yeah.
Or what I hate who I am because of you, or whatever the exact line is. I'm butchering it, I know. But that's just incredible writing, and addressing that here, I think, was really important.
Yeah. One of the things that I just thought about now, but I think is was critical, was the amount of trust that Captain Picard puts in O'Brien. Like O'Brien says, "Hey, let me beam over to the Phoenix to talk with Captain Maxwell." Now this is at like a very tense moment in the standoff, right? They're all at red alert. They're about to like
Yeah,
destroy each other, and here comes O'Brien. Is like, "Can I go talk to him, Captain?" And Captain Picard lets him do that. He goes, "It's like, okay, you know, you can beam over." As far as Captain Picard knew, like, it could have made the situation worse as well, right? But he puts an enormous amount of trust into O'Brien to be able to do that. Because what is at stake here is it's not just the lives of the Enterprise and then all the crewmen of the Phoenix, but the lives of Cardassian like civilization and the Federation civilization too. So it's a great deal of trust that Picard does right there with O'Brien. O'Brien's
yeah.
just such a good guy. I know. You love O'Brien. We all love
Hey,
O'Brien. So yeah.
there's a reason why he's my
Yeah.
favorite, man. There's a
Yeah.
reason why he's such a well-developed, well-written character. I did find the line though when
Hmm.
O'Brien gets up and he says to Darrow, the Cardassian, he said, "It's not you I hate, Cardassian. I hate what I became because of you." So I was like 80% right, 80% there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's such a good line. It really, really is, because he's that self-awareness. He's identifying, I don't hate you. I hate what I've become. And that's really powerful. Really, really powerful. Um, it's interesting too. So Golmasset is on the bridge with Picard and everything, right? As they're heading after Maxwell. And Tele, I think is how you say it, his other aide, is escorted onto the bridge. And I love Worf's reaction, because you can see like Worf's proud of himself. He's like, I caught this guy by this computer, trying to access the computer terminal on deck 35, studying our weapon systems and blah blah blah. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do it. But Worf is just proud of himself. He's like I gotcha. Yeah, yeah. See, I knew it. I knew you had no honor. It's just
That's
this.
right.
I don't know if you noticed that on Worf, but you could just tell he was proud.
I did. I did. That was good for Worf.
Hmm.
Find the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really was. But I did like that Golmasset took responsibility for it, apologized for it, said he would discipline him up, discipline him for it. Picard pretty much, and I love Picard. Picard's like, hey, look, yep, case closed, got it. You do what you need to do. He's not really putting too much stock into it. I mean, Picard could have flipped out and been like, I invite you guys on here as guests, and your guys are snooping around our computers and blah 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 blah. I mean, he could have done that, but he's just like, nope, it's water off the duck's back. Already forgotten about it. Let's move on. That's the diplomat in him. That is the
Mhm.
one who can really calm down a situation, and I love it.
That's
I
right.
it's just so good on Picard's part.
Yep. Yep. I think he says the matter is closed in his mind now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also love in that exchange, Chris, I want to hear your thoughts on this part of the exchange between the two of them in the ready room,
Hmm.
where Gold Masset says uh, that he himself is not a man who uh, needs or craves war, and that he thinks that Picard is also similar in that way. What do you think about that exchange? I think that's a pretty powerful little insight that shows you that both of them want the same thing and both of them are on the same page.
Yeah. The preceding action by Masset to kind of to confiscate like Marcel and or Tell and kind of explain that he's going to punish Tell, I think is is an act of trying to show Picard that, hey, I also want to be on the same side. I do also want to avoid war. This is an important like trust building um, exercise and and trust building acts that they're doing with each other. Now, at, towards or at the end of the episode, I think you still see stark differences like culturally, like on how they view um, Maxwell, obviously, and how they view the situation. But this was a good relationship, I think, building between Massette and Picard. So that that came out across well.
Yeah. And clearly both men realize that they're the only thing standing between war again between the
Yeah.
Cardassians and the Federation, right? So that they both understand the significance and importance of their roles
Hmm.
in this
Hmm.
particular moment. Um, they do catch up to Maxwell and the USS Phoenix, and Maxwell agrees to come on board. And I don't know about you, Chris, but when Maxwell came on board that transporter and he's all smoking and joking with O'Brien and everything, I, you're 100% right on the self-awareness piece because it's like Maxwell doesn't think he's done anything wrong, and I think that's something that we can talk about, now and or later, uh, as we highlight his character in this episode, because in his mind, he hasn't done anything wrong. In his mind, he fully believes that the Cardassians are up to something. And he even says something to the effect of he doesn't say gut feeling, but something to the effect of like, oh, it's just, yeah, I have this feeling. I can smell it kind of thing. Um, but Picard's like, no, 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 no. That's not how we operate.
Right.
We don't operate like that, right? Like we need proof kind of thing. But I'm curious on what you thought of his demeanor and his kind of just real lackadaisical approach to all this when he first comes on board the Enterprise.
Yeah, it it was starkly different than the seriousness of the rest of the episode, right?
Yes.
Um, and he's kind of he's right. I think his suspicions are right about the Cardassians. They were up to like nefarious activity, as which we learn at the end. It's kind of inferred that he's right. Um, but eh, yeah, he's just so sure that what he's doing is righteous from his
Yeah.
own kind of point of view, right? That uh, because he comes on and he's convinced himself that once he talks to Picard, he's going to make Picard understand what the situation really is. Because it's really shortly after he meets Commander Riker that he says, "Hey, best I see your captain right away. Much to discuss."
Mm.
So it's like he's he's got this feeling of certainty that he's right. He's acting with his own personal righteousness in the situation. He feels like, yeah, I know I'm right. I'm so glad it was Picard that came after me because Picard's like the only one that's been out here that knows what the situation is. Once I talk to him, Picard will completely be on my side, be on the same page, and then, uh, then we'll know that we've got a problem with the Cardassians, right? He needs to be able to tell someone that the Cardassians are up to no good. And so that's why he's got this sense of eagerness when he does come on the Enterprise, you know. He wants to talk to Captain Picard right away. So he can tell him right away, Cardassians are up to no good. We have to do this.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. However, the mood turns real quick,
Mhm.
real quick in this, right? Because it goes from him saying, oh, you've been out here, I'm glad it was you, to, oh, this room smells like a bureaucrat's office,
Mhm.
because he says I have to go out and do this because I can't wait for years while the bureaucrats talk about it and everything. So now you have someone who's a captain. He's not up at the admiral ranks, and he's recognizing, hey, there's too much of this paperwork and bureaucracy and everything else to go through. By that time, it's going to be too late. And I mean, I would say, and I would assume you would agree with this, that Maxwell believes he's preventing a war by doing this rather than starting one.
Yeah. Yeah, I would absolutely say that. Do you notice the body language when Maxwell comes into Captain Picard's ready room? He's standing. Captain Maxwell is immediately going to um, wants to greet Captain Picard, and Captain Picard is sitting. So and he sits for like a prolonged time, right? He
Yeah,
doesn't immediately stand to greet Maxwell. No, he's sitting. He's very reflective, very much somber,
yeah,
very much like considering like how do I talk to Captain Maxwell in this situation? Because this is not good.
yeah.
Um,
Picard's not excited to see him, that's for sure.
he's not. Yeah, he's he's just thinking, how do I deal with this? You
Yeah.
know?
But what I love is that even though the situation calls for Maxwell to stand down and be taken back to the start to Starbase 211, I think is the one
Mm,
where
mhm.
Admiral Hayden's ordered him to go. He's still even after all that, even after the fact that Maxwell has destroyed the ship, right? 700 people are killed. He still gives him the opportunity to go back to his ship and command his ship back to the starbase and not be thrown into a brig and be, excuse me, disgraced or anything like that. That to me shows real class. That to me shows Picard's uh it shows Picard's respect for the captaincy, if that's a word,
Yeah.
and the position.
Or or maybe Picard's respect for Maxwell as an individual because, like this because like we noted earlier, like Picard's attitude towards Maxwell is very different than Picard's attitude towards Pressman, right?
That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you're right. Maybe
Yeah.
it is Picard's respect for Maxwell's service record as well,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
things that Maxwell's done.
Yeah. But you're right. Like he is doing all he can to show that level of like respect and esteem to Maxwell, like as a person, as a human being, right?
Yeah.
So, which I think was good. It was a very classy move, very diplomatic move, very principled move that Picard does.
Do you think that if you think of the all the captains, both Legacy and New Trek, do you feel like Picard might show the most empathy of all the captains, leading captains, I should say?
Empathy, like amongst all the captains that we've, you know, I
Because I mean,
yeah,
is there not a level of empathy here that Picard is showing to a certain extent for Maxwell, given his service record and everything?
absolutely there is such empathy. And we have to remember at this point in Captain Picard's life, he had been Locutus,
Mm,
right? He had not himself willingly, but his being Locutus had caused the death of so many Federation officers.
yeah,
So I think you're absolutely right that his empathy is so much higher, a thousandfold higher than others possibly could have just by his life experience at this point, right?
yeah,
What he's gone through.
yeah. I mean, I mean, this is a great episode, an example of showing the effect of what happened to Picard as Locutus and how that's now affecting Picard and how he is a captain moving forward
Yeah,
and as a Starfleet officer moving forward.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But this doesn't last long because the Phoenix is about to do a hard right as they're headed back to the starbase.
They, they are. And so they've got to go into pursuit again.
Yeah,
So,
like a game of
um,
cat and mouse here.
yeah, yeah, it was. And so, yeah, of course. I mean, of course, like Maxwell's gonna take that. What I found thinking about this a little bit was I know there wasn't really much time to explore it in this episode, but I was just thinking about Captain Maxwell's crew. So how they felt,
Yeah.
so there must have been maybe some, I suppose, apprehension in the crew, but of course not as relevant because we're dealing with Captain Maxwell, right?
Yeah.
It's his choice, but there had to been, I'm sure, a lot of trepidation and fear, probably a lot of fear within that crew too.
Don't you, unless the crew bought into what Maxwell believed and they were fully on board with the idea too.
Could
They're like, oh
be.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're definitely, you know what I mean? So that could have been
Yeah.
two. Don't you feel like this could have been a two-part episode?
Yeah.
And if it had, maybe they could have shown those scenes on the bridge of the Pegasus and maybe some of the crew either rebelling, not like in a mutiny sense, but rebelling in the sense of like, well, but Captain, we don't know, and blah blah blah, and then them, kind of seeing some
Yeah.
of that rejection of his ideas,
Yeah. Yeah.
and maybe even having like the first officer saying that he wasn't going to do something, and then Captain Maxwell saying, "All right, you're confined to quarters or whatever for disobeying a direct order." Point to somebody else and having them be the first officer, and that adds a whole nother element of drama into it and showing the commitment that Maxwell has to taking out this Cardassian uh, science outpost or whatever it was
Yeah.
that they took out. I mean, don't you think it could have been something like that? It could have been really dramatic that way.
Yeah. It would have, and that would have been really interesting. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Because I gotta imagine there was plenty of trepidation, plenty of fear
Yeah.
on that crew.
And to a certain extent, I would think there would be a certain level of pushback, but maybe, with as fond of feelings and thoughts that O'Brien had for Maxwell, maybe his
Mm-hmm.
crew just they fully believed in what he was doing, and
Hmm.
therefore there wasn't any. But it would have been some good drama to maybe have one of the senior officers, have some pushback, or one of the senior officers I don't even resign from their post or something out of protest
Yeah.
for the actions, or that would have been some really good extra drama there, and it would have kind of shown maybe the craze in Maxwell's eyes for wanting to get back at the Cardassians.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Or
Absolutely.
at least so we think, right? Because there's a lot of talk in the episode about, is Maxwell a vengeful person? Is this just his way of getting back for him losing his family, that kind of thing? So we kind of get those tones and ideas in our head as an audience as the episode's going on.
And he doesn't come across like when we meet him, like he doesn't come across as angry, I
No.
felt. He comes
Yeah.
across as like charismatic and certain that he's right. Like I'm right, right? And so in this particular standoff that he's having, like he's saying, Captain Picard, um, I want you because he wants to convince Captain Picard so bad. Like, hey, I want you to board this Cardassian vessel, look at it. Like if you don't look at it, then I'm going to destroy it because he desperately wants to show the captain that, hey, what I'm saying is true, right? Please, I am right. I'm trying, like you said earlier, I'm trying to protect the Federation. And so that's what he wants Captain Picard to understand.
Yeah.
Um, but he is, yeah, unfortunately, right? He can't see the entire picture. He's not as self-aware. He can't zoom out and be in the position that Captain Picard is. He just can't. There's no way he can. So, um, it's almost like that was the only play that Captain Maxwell could do.
Yeah. And I think there's a moment at the end of the episode, isn't it? That exchange between Picard and Golmasset, where even Golmasset was surprised that Picard didn't board the Cardassian ship. I want to
Yeah,
say like
yeah.
he kind of came across the idea of, well, if you had boarded the ship, maybe he would, But I don't. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but I thought there was some kind of exchange where Masset mentioned something about how, well, if you had boarded the ship or whatever, and
Well,
um,
yeah. Captain Picard says if we had boarded the ship, then we would have found out what's really
that's what it
going
was.
on,
That's
right?
what it was.
And
Yeah,
this would be a very different conversation.
that's right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
But
And he's not
yeah,
wrong either, right? Yeah.
he's not wrong, and that thematically goes into that idea of like trust that was earlier in the episode where they go like where Worf says trust must be earned and cannot be given. and then Captain Picard making that choice on going, ah, even though I know some of these things that are like probably like true, then I'm gonna choose not to board the ship. I'm gonna choose to kind of trust what the Cardassians are saying at face value, um, so that the greater peace could be preserved between the civilizations.
Yeah, I think Picard recognized that proving Maxwell right was less important than keeping the peace.
Yeah,
Because based on the innuendos and the based on the innuendos, excuse me, and the way that Picard talks to Macet at the end, makes you think that they had a pretty strong indication that Maxwell was probably right.
yeah,
So yeah, Picard took the higher ground, right, and
yeah,
said, "Yeah, we could have. We if we boarded your ship, then we might be arming for war." And that was not the orders he was given, right? He was
right,
gave specific orders to keep the peace.
right.
And we know that Picard is very much for the most part, a rule follower and an order follower. Now, there's been a few times he hasn't. Star Trek Insurrection comes to mind, but that then again, Admiral Dougherty was quite the moron. So,
Yeah, yeah. Admiral
but
Dougherty, like, yeah, he gets what he deserves in that movie.
I think so. Admiral Dougherty, under the guise of it's all for the people of the Federation. No, you just want to be younger, dude. You see your face in the mirror and go, I got a lot of gray hair. I need to do something about this. Uh, so yeah, I think Picard in this episode as a whole does a really wonderful job with protecting what he needed to do, which is keep the peace.
Yeah.
That exchange between O'Brien and Maxwell when Picard when I love that O'Brien takes the initiative and shows up on the bridge
Hmm.
and says, "Hey, let me beam over. I can get over there. There's like a 15th of a second or whatever where the shields are down long enough to beam over, and let me go talk to him. At least give me the chance to talk to him." And I love that Picard does that, gives him the opportunity to do that,
Yeah.
and let's try to get through him. And O'Brien uh, comes over and says, basically that we got to stop this. Um, that we can't do this. This isn't right. And they sing a song together.
Hmm.
Um, I can't remember what the name of it. Something about the minstrel boy to the war has gone and
Yeah.
all that. This is where I think Maxwell has a glimmer of self-awareness. He realizes he's just not going to be able to win this.
Yeah. This scene between O'Brien and Maxwell, I love. There's no background music, I think, in
No.
this scene. And it's framed in Maxwell's radio room in his office, and you've got the red alert like flashing right there, and Maxwell's pretty contemplative, I think. He's very surprised when Maxwell shows up. But these two men that are kind of talking just as just human beings, reminiscing about like what had transpired in the war. They're talking about the friends that they had lost. It was Stompy, I believe, that was killed that they both knew, and Captain Maxwell really liked him.
Yeah.
But they're really making this connection, like human being to human being, and O'Brien like really reaching him, going, it's not gonna work. We there's no way out of this. We have to go back. And it's so Brian that does make, like you said, does make Maxwell more self-aware, like on the circumstance and in the situation. As it does, it takes when we're so into it, into these situations, and as Maxwell has been in his mind in this path of righteousness and I'm right, he needed someone external to come in and say, "Hey, step back a little bit. We need you to come back from the brink of the abyss of where you are and come back with us so you don't have this annihilation of these two species." Um, I think is important because Maxwell, fundamentally, he's a good human being. He had tragedy happen, and he needed someone to help him bring him back. And this happens to be the circumstance with Maxwell. And like you mentioned earlier, like could this happen to anybody? Oh, absolutely, it could happen to anybody. It happens to Captain Picard in First Contact.
Mm.
First Contact, he is on the brink. He has lost himself, right? It took someone external, and I forget her name, but she's from Earth, um, to bring Captain
Oh,
Picard
Lily
back.
Sloan.
Lily
Yeah,
Sloan,
Lily.
thank you.
Yeah, right. Is that
Yeah,
her name? I think so.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Captain Picard has, this is a parallel there. Captain Picard and Maxwell. Right now, Maxwell happens to be here, like in his moment in his life. Man, Captain Picard has gone through being Locutus, and then in First Contact, he's losing the Enterprise. The Borg are going to win again, and he's lost it. He's going, oh my God, the line has to be drawn here. I'm going to do everything and anything it can be
Yeah.
taken. And then Lily says, hey, okay, Captain Ahab, and that snaps Captain Picard back. So I think this was so important in this moment because it just reminds us that yeah, anybody can get lost, and then you need someone like external to come back and help like bring you back. And just this beautiful moment between like two human beings, like sharing this connection that they had in the past, and O'Brien just to say, hey, come back, come back. And
Yeah.
such a tragic like life at the end that Captain Maxwell had, losing his family the way he did.
Yeah. Maxwell. Okay. eh, This might be a little bit of a stretch of a comparison
Yeah.
here, but does Maxwell remind you at all a little bit of the captain from Year of Hell, where he is hell bent on bringing his family back? So he's constantly now, of course, way different scenario,
Yeah.
everything. But this guy is hell bent on bringing his family back, and he's manipulating the timeline, and all this stuff, right, to bring them back.
Ah,
And in this case,
yeah.
Maxwell doesn't admit it, and O'Brien initially doesn't think it, but Maxwell is doing this. Now, granted, Maxwell thinks he's doing this because he has reason to believe these ships are doing squirrely things. But in this scene between Maxwell and O'Brien, he breaks down.
Yeah.
And it's because of the loss of his family. And I do think that that is a motivating factor why he is out sniffing around the Cardassians, or the Cardies, as O'Brien would call him in DS9, or Spoonheads, would be another term of endearment for the
Yeah,
Cardassians, I guess. But why he's sniffing around, I think that vengeance factor, or that vengeance, is a primary factor for why he's doing what he's doing.
absolutely is. Yeah, absolutely is a primary factor. And these personal things that happen to the captain, and these personal interactions and experiences that he's had with the Cardassians, obviously affect the objectivity that he can have in the
Yeah.
circumstance, right? So, um, there's with even at the subconscious level, he's got to be thinking, hey, I have to do this like for my family, like for the boy that couldn't even like grow up, for the wife that he had that was lost, like by these actions from the Cardassian, like, and in a way, like as a human being, like how can you? It's tragic. Like how can you fault him for feeling that way, for thinking that way to a certain degree, right? He was a renowned captain, decorated in war, did all of these great things, lost his family, and then he continues to serve, and then he's kind of right in that he's suspicious. He suspects some like some bad things that the Cardassians are doing, and he wants to take action, but well, he does take action,
Yeah.
and he just he loses faith through that. He loses faith in the ability of the Federation to act decisively, so he takes it upon himself, like in
Yeah.
that path of righteousness.
And that's a key thing there,
Yeah,
right? The fact that he loses faith in the Federation to do what's
yeah,
right and to
yeah,
do what needs to be done because of the bureaucracy and all the stuff that goes on at the highest levels. Um, okay, let's wrap this up, and let's give me just some overall. I mean, maybe you kind of already just did, but give me
hmm
your kind of overall thoughts about Maxwell, and is he one of Starfleet's finest? Or does this type of scenario negate that?
Mm. I mean, I'm pausing a little bit because I'm thinking
I
through
know
this, right? Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not actually an easy question. It's
Yeah.
actually kind of a hard question, but
Yeah. It is a hard question because you could I I I'm thinking of Captain Maxwell like um in the same way I'm thinking of like Captain Picard. I I feel like Maxwell is like he definitely was one of Starfleet's finest. And there are these tragic circumstances that drove him over the edge, that caused him to lose faith in the Federation, that that personally caused him to lose like objectivity, that caused him to go on this like path of like righteousness. Yeah, he killed over 700 um Cardassian, maybe civilians, thinking maybe maybe civilians. I know some of them were Cardassian soldiers on the warship, but he was Starfleet's finest and had some tragic circumstances like cause his end. Um, Captain Picard, like I mean, definitely like Captain Picard is Starfleet's finest, right? But there's a if you think about Captain Picard in the terms of Wolf 359, what happened there, there's such a fine line on how things could have shifted and twisted, right? So Captain Picard just being Locutus and just being him, even though it wasn't his own actions, like caused in the death of so many Federation citizens. So you could flip it like and think of Captain Picard the same way, like, oh, is he really like Starfleet's finest or not? But I mean, he is because Wolf 359 wasn't in his control, right? He was being controlled by the Borg. But it's interesting when you look at those like perspectives. You've got two great captains who throughout their career you've got this great loss of civilian life. There's been tragedies that have happened to both of them that have caused these circumstances where there's been a great deal of loss of life. So it's it's really interesting to think about it from that perspective.
yeah.
Don't know if I really answered the question, but
No,
do you
you did
think,
because you
yeah.
said he was one of Starfleet's finest,
Yeah.
right? And I would agree with you. I mean, we are set up in the episode to believe that he was based on this incredible service record. I mean, you're talking about getting this commendation three separate times, the highest commendation that a Starfleet officer can receive three separate times during the war. Uh, that tells you that he was doing something right, and that it sounds like his service record was spotless
Hmm.
prior to this incident and prior to kind of snapping, right, and everything. Um, I kind of look at Maxwell the way I look at Commodore Decker, like I said before.
Hmm.
Someone who was a great officer, a great leader, and then had a tragic moment happen that's made them snap. So what he did was wrong, attacking and killing a bunch of people. But does that mean that he's no longer Starfleet's finest? I I don't know that I have an answer for that, but I would like to say that he was one of Starfleet's finest.
Hmm.
And then the question becomes, is he still one of Starfleet's finest? I think you can make arguments both ways that he is and he isn't. But we want to leave that up to you, those of you watching or listening. Do you think Captain Maxwell is still one of Starfleet's finest or not? Now, given what he did, given the fact that as the episode ends and they're flying back to the starbase, the first officer has taken over and Captain Maxwell is has been confined. My guess is when he goes back to Starbase 211 that he's going to be tried for what he did and probably put into a Federation penal colony. Prison basically, Federation prison. Probably either for the remainder of his life or for a very, very long time. That to me probably means he's not one of Starfleet's finest. Um, Although Tom Paris was pulled out of a
Yeah.
Federation prison to serve on board Voyager.
Yeah.
Now I agree he's not a captain or an admiral or anything like that, but yeah, I think this is so we talked about this I think before in this spotlight series we're going to do where there's going to be episodes where we talk about a specific person and there's going to be those people I think like Pressman where it's very black and white, right? And then there's going to be others where it's there's some shades of gray. I think Maxwell's one of those shades of gray. Am I wrong on that? Because I really feel like he is.
You're not wrong. Even Picard, this is subtle, but I think this is important. Captain Picard on the way home confines Captain Maxwell to his quarters. Now, Captain Picard put Admiral Pressman in the brig, if I'm not
Yeah,
wrong, right? So
yeah,
so that's like,
that's different. Yeah,
yeah, that's different. That it just shows like inside how Captain Picard feels about like Maxwell, right? So, um, Captain Picard is very much about you got to maintain the peace, you got to keep the treaty. Treaty must be maintained on both sides. So anytime a treaty is violated in a circumstance, man, Captain Picard takes that to heart. He's like, how,
Mm.
Federation citizens were, if you're a Federation officer or Starfleet officer, you're sworn to uphold these treaties.
Yeah,
Now, he does say that to Maxwell, but this underlying thing is Captain Picard's kind of becomes aware that Cardassia is not upholding the treaty. And that is what Maxwell is trying to say, right? And that is what Maxwell is trying to like explain to Picard. But he can't go there. Picard can't go there because if
yeah.
if he goes there, then all sorts of bad stuff happens.
Yeah, no joke,
Yeah.
no joke. Yeah, this episode, I love the way Picard ends this episode, where he turns his chair with his back to Golmasset and says to him, "We'll be watching."
Yeah.
So it's basic. I think that's Picard's way of kind of playing a little bit of chess and putting the Cardassians into check and saying, we saw that transport ship that was there had all this extra shielding and you couldn't penetrate it and blah 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 and basically saying yeah we know what's going on and Maxwell actually was right
Yeah.
but we did this to stop the peace. I mean there's some subtext there, right? And the "we'll be watching" is his way of saying yeah knock it off or else kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that was so dramatic when he says "we'll be watching." He turns his chair and puts his back to Golmasset. That was well done. I don't know whose idea it was, if that was Patrick Stewart's idea, if that was a director or what, but that was really well done. That was his way of giving him the finger and telling him to get the frick out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That was
That was good.
fantastic. Yeah. So Captain Maxwell, certainly one of the characters that I thought was of utmost importance to talk about in this Spotlight series, really hits home. Um, we have so many other great characters to talk about as we go through this Spotlight series. We still have a number of TNG episodes to talk about with Admiral Mark Jameson in Too Short of a Season, Ensign Vice Admiral Kennelly with Ensign Rowe, our favorite admiral, Fleet Admiral Nechayev in the episode
Hmm.
Descent. Captain Jellicoe in Chain of Command Part 1 and 2. That's going to be fun because I know you and I have very similar thoughts
Yeah.
about Jellicoe and the fact that he gets a bad rep. We've got Vice Admiral Haftel and the Offspring, and then we jump into DS9 for a number of great episodes, including the Maquis Part 1 and 2 with Cisco's old buddy, Captain Calvin Hudson. Admiral Layton in Homefront and Paradise Lost, which that two-part episode is one of my absolute favorite in the whole franchise
Yeah.
as far as two-parters. A Time to Stand with Admiral Ross, and he has a ton of episodes. I love Admiral Ross, and then the Dias Cast with Admiral Todman, and so much more. So we got a lot still to get after in this Spotlight series. A lot of fun discussion, fun character studies as we go through Starfleet's finest, or not. In this case, maybe you're not. Uh, and I'm not going to say the name yet. So for those of you watching or listening, be sure to stay tuned to our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. If you're not following us on there, please do for all of our latest upcoming announcements because we are going to have an absolutely massive, massive, massive guest announcement this coming week. At the time of this recording, when it comes out this week, we'll be announcing a guest coming up. The episode will be airing the following week. So be sure to go onto Facebook, Instagram, and Threads, and even YouTube, and be watchful and stay tuned for a massive, massive celebrity guest announcement. Chris, I can't wait for this one. This is a Mount Rushmore one for me.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. Incredible,
Yeah.
my friend.
We're looking forward to it. But anyways, yes. So thank you everybody as always for watching and listening all over the globe and the interwebs. We very much appreciate it. We hope you're enjoying our current Spotlight series. I know I'm having a blast and doing these leadership and character studies with you, Chris, is absolutely a joy.
Yeah, this is terrific to explore. So many different facets to explore, and looking forward to these different episodes.
Same. And it's great that we're able to put a bunch of TNG into the podcast, which is great. Something I know we've talked about wanting to do some more TNG, and it's really been an awesome like stroll down memory lane with some of these episodes that I remember seeing for the first time when I was younger. It's certainly quite a bit of nostalgia for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, anyways, again, stay tuned for our massive celebrity guest announcement coming soon. And thank you as always. Take care, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Random Redshirt Podcast.